Warner Brothers Animation. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. In a day and age where certain CEOs seem intent on just completely erasing the very concept of animation from their streaming platforms, it's important to remember a time where putting Warner Brothers and animation together was like a golden ticket to cartoon paradise. Without even getting into their big catalog of now iconic superhero cartoons, the collaboration between Warner Brothers and Steven Spielberg back in the late 80s led to an absolute plethora of great cartoons. Tiny Toon Adventures, Pinky and the Brain, Freakazoid. Even the somewhat lesser known shows that came after this partnership, such as Hysteria, Road Rovers, and Tasmania, have a special place in a lot of people's hearts. But of course, the biggest and most famous thing to come out of this collaboration was the Animaniacs. Bringing back the variety comedy cartoon shorts format of yesteryear, the Animaniacs provided entertainment that appealed to all age groups, aided by the talent of many amazing animators, musicians, and voice actors, all in order to create something truly special. So special, in fact, that it has endured to this very day, and even got itself a modern revival on Hulu, which sadly seems to now have ended at its third season. And you know how the story goes by now. If you produced anything that enjoyed even a little bit of success in the 90s, you were basically guaranteed to get at least one video game. Granted, not necessarily a good video game, but a video game nonetheless. So of course, the Warners are no exception, and they have a decent chunk of games under their belts. Over the years, the Warner Brothers and the Warner sister have made their way to the Sega Genesis, the Game Boy, the Super Nintendo, PC, PS1, PS2, and even the Nintendo DS. And today we're taking a look at not just one of the first Animaniacs games made, but also one of the later ones, namely Animaniacs for the Sega Genesis and Animaniacs The Great Edgar Hunt for the PS2. Now, why these two specifically, you ask? I don't know, man. What do I look like, James Rolfe or something? These are the only two I own. Get off my back! Now, I'm sorry to start bitching before we even begin, but I have to rant about this for a second. I mean, look at it. It's atrocious. Not only is it big and cumbersome, it's also all hard and rigid and feels unpleasant to hold in your hands. And your fingers have to take these awkward leaps from one pressure point to another just to get any real enjoyment out of it. Oh yeah, and the Sega Genesis controller sucks too.
Good night, everybody.
Okay, but for real, it's probably just because I didn't grow up with the Sega Genesis, but I always found this controller weird and clunky. For an SNES competitor, having half the buttons to work with will never not be awkward to me. Especially with the way they're placed in a straight line rather than something closer and easier on your thumb. But anyway, let's pop this bastard right in and see what we're dealing with. Animaniacs was developed and released by Konami back in 1994. You know, back when they actually made video games every once in a blue moon, right at the height of Animaniacs' popularity. It got itself a Game Boy port developed by Factor 5, and there was a similar but different game also developed by Konami released on the SNES in that same year, but like I said, we're not gonna be focusing on those. I just figured I'd mention those for the sticklers in the audience.
Excuse me.
Stickler, what are you doing here?
In this game, the Animaniacs have decided to open a movie memorabilia shop. Which, in good Animaniacs fashion, means they're gonna crash a bunch of film sets and steal the props. But while they're working on this, Pinky and the Brain appear to be hatching their own scheme in the background. And right away, man, this game is beautiful. It's bold, it's colorful, it looks wonderfully stylish, and the very first thing you do is escape the water tower and run into the movie lot, much like in the original show intro itself. And then you move right on to a little obstacle course that quickly teaches you every specialty that each individual Warner has. That's right, you play as all three Warner siblings at the same time in this game, and all three of them have their own unique skill to help you progress. Pressing the C button instantly switches between each of the Warners, while the A button activates whatever skill they have. Oh, and yeah, you jump with B, which is somewhat less interesting. Yakko has a paddle ball that he can use to stun enemies, but he can also move boxes to help solve puzzles. Wacko can use his mallet to activate switches and even light fuses, however the hell that works. And by blowing a kiss, Dot can make other characters in the stage infatuated with her and influence them to help the Warners advance. Because they think she's cute, you perverts! Remember? She had a whole song about it? Yeah, we're not quite in anime Dot territory yet, people. Anyway, we're off to the stage selection screen, giving you a choice of 4 movie genre themed levels that you can tackle in any order you want. There's a jungle adventure level, a western level, a horror level, and yes, of course, a Star Wars parody sci-fi level. And may the Force be with us! Okay, that's pretty good, Wacko. They actually managed to slip in a few good cracks at the Friday the 13th franchise too. I thought Janus died for good in part 15. He did, but if you remember, his analyst stole the mask and became reincarnated. Then after the analyst died in part 26, his butler became Janus briefly before handing the reins to his insurance salesman. Wow, that is scary. Okay, you know what? That's actually a pretty good description of how confusing some of this shit gets. Yeah, that's right. I'm looking at you, Michael, you timeline bungling bitch. Now, truth be told, there isn't anything super original about this game exactly. It's a pretty standard platformer at its core. You know, the usual get to the end of the stage, pick up 100 collectibles for extra lives, fight a boss and move on kind of stuff. I guess there's also these hidden bonus games you can find to get more stars, but they don't really pay out enough to be worth tracking down. The game is actually more of a puzzle platformer. The challenge lies not so much in precise jumping, which is hard to do anyway because your jump is kinda slow and heavy, but more in figuring out which special vulnerability to use in which way in order to progress through the level. That being said, there are definitely parts that feel like they were made with faster paced gameplay in mind, and they can get pretty frustrating and lead to some bullshit deaths. Like some of these timed jump puzzles that just lot putting an obstacle right above your head, for example. Or this exploding hallway puzzle that basically guarantees a death if you don't already know what wanted to switch to ahead of time. And then there's the just plain tedious stuff like this pie fight with Ralph here. What you're supposed to do is keep whacking this thing in order to throw pies at him on the other track. It's a pretty funny idea, but the pie launcher keeps unpredictably bouncing all over the place, and he moves so erratically that you can't really time it for beans. You really just gotta whack the shit out of it and hope you get lucky. The same level also has this train chase where you gotta knock coal into the latch above to keep ahead of Ralph, but timing Wacko's mallet correctly so you get the coal in there without bouncing it back at you can be a bit of a hassle. As a result, most of the game comes down to pure trial and error, which normally I'm not really a big fan of. But once you get a good sense of what each stage wants you to do on each screen, you can breeze through them pretty fast and basically make them feel like actual funny cartoon shorts. And that is where the game truly shines, in its cartoony charm. Seriously, what this game might lack in originality, it oozes in Animaniacs' humor and personality. I mean, just look at the Warners themselves. Their health is represented by these cute little individual mood icons in the corner, and there's so much bounce in their step that it's impossible not to smile. Even the game over and continue screens are lifted straight from the cartoon intro, and I'm pretty sure the Lose a Life jingle is a snippet from the Pinky and the Brain intro.
The Pinky and the Brain.
And look at how Dracula reacts differently in the mirror depending on which Warner is taking the lead. There's just so much cute and humorous attention to detail here. It's awesome! And if you want cameos, then boy do we have them! Rita and Runt, Skippy and Slappy, the Goodfeathers, Mindy and Buttons, Pinky and the Brain, even the Hip Hippo show up, and they pretty much all affect the gameplay in various ways, whether they're just part of the cartoony obstacles or help you if you interact with them. Eat your heart out, Hulu! And check out Hello Nurse and Dr. Scratch and Sniff in this one level. Scratch and Sniff bores you with a lecture that takes away your stars, and Hello Nurse draws you towards her and paralyzes you, unless you happen to be playing as Dot.
Boys, go fig.
Screw you, if that's not a funny way to include them, nothing is. No sign of Minerva Mink though, proving once again that Hulu aren't the only cowards to get their hands on this franchise. What, like she couldn't have been a hot bar wench in the Western level? Like her and Wilford couldn't have shown up in the horror level for a werewolf gag? I mean, Death and Dracula are there for Christ's sakes. Couldn't she have been Princess Leia or something? Look, I'm sorry to rant, but people really need to get over their hang-ups with this chick. I mean, she's a humorously attractive cartoon mink, not a freaking hustler centerfold. Just grow a sense of humor, people, please. And like any good game, the final battle with Pinky and the Brain has all the charm of the rest of the game and puts all your skills to the test. You gotta use Dot to charm Pinky so he forgets to light one of his bombs. Then you push the bomb toward the robot with Yakko, make Wacko light the fuse, and you're golden. It's funny, it's totally in character for everyone involved, and it's a decently challenging fight for such a simple game. I just wish they'd stop showing all these close-ups of Brain. They're a little bit, So that's Animaniacs on the Sega Genesis. A perfectly cute, fun, and charming little romp that isn't gonna knock your socks off or anything, but is very, very entertaining nonetheless. But just think, if we're off to this good a start, then surely Animaniacs The Great Edgar Hunt on the PS2 must be even better. I mean, it came out 11 years later. Just think of the technological advancements in that time. Surely, this has to be a truly awesome Animaniacs game. The back of the box even says we've got all the original voice actors in there, because I apparently just can't do a video about any PS2 game without Rob Paulsen sticking his nose in there somewhere. Alright, let's start this bastard up and see what we're dealing with. Oh hey, it's developed by Warthog, the creators of all-time classics like Loons, Fight for Fame, X2, Wolverine's Revenge, and Tom and Jerry and Housetrap. Oh no!
Hi everyone! I'm outside the Warner Film Lot, where tensions are high today as we count down to this year's Edgar ceremony. Last year, Richie Rich Guy cleaned up with his smash hit Huff Puff and Two Little Pigs, winning Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, and Best Pigs. But are we in for any shocks? will Gwyn's softy pale toes burst into tears again?
Gwyn's softy pale Are they making a Gwyneth Paltrow joke? What? I don't... Okay, so maybe we aren't off to a great start. You know, that happens, but I'm sure the game itself is... You know, the worst part of all this is... I do it to myself. Oh god, just look at this murky-ass, badly lit, dead-eyed monstrosity of a so-called cartoon game! And that's in the pre-rendered cutscenes! The in-game graphics are barely any better! I'm sorry, did I miss a meeting or something? Isn't this supposed to be based on a highly popular cartoon franchise that's owned by one of the biggest movie studios of all time? Looney Tunes Sheep Raider managed to look vibrant, colorful, and cartoony on the PS1 4 years earlier! What the hell is this thing's excuse?
You know, it's amazing what the special effects guys can pull off these days with just a crummy rolling oil painting, a dry ice machine, and a $50,000 computer.
No, absolutely. I mean, as long as they have access to a pre-existing, nearly infinite pool of human-made art that they can shamelessly Frankenstein together without consent.
I'm hideous.
Anyway, the story once again deals with the Warners traveling through various movie sets based on film genres, this time in order to collect all the the Edgars for the upcoming award ceremony before they get melted down by the evil villain C.C. DeVille. I'm sorry, are you really gonna give your one Cecil B. DeMille joke to this guy? What, we couldn't go up against Ralph the Guard and Thaddeus Potts? We just had to make up a random bad guy who never actually interacts with the Warners beyond the final boss fight, huh? Not even a caricature from an actual Animaniacs short either. No, just a random-ass generic bad guy who just exists to make one pun about one of the fathers of American cinema. Anyway, as you can probably guess from all of that, the game is a collectathon platformer in somewhat of a similar vein to something like Super Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie. Within each of the 5 stages, plus the Warner movie lot Hop World, there's a certain number of Edgars and tools to collect in order to unlock more areas to explore. And they're all found by completing various challenges, whether that's picking up enough of the level-specific collectibles, beating a Pinky and the Brain minigame, gathering the hidden script pages, finding Chicken Boo, finishing various minigames, or even beating a boss fight. Get enough to unlock the final battle, and you win. Simple as.
Not that this game is getting predictable or anything.
Well, there you go. I don't even need to review the game. Rob's already doing it for me. Cause yeah man, 2 console generations later, and not only do we just barely have like one more level than the first game, they didn't even bother to come up with some new genres. Much like the last game, we've got a western world, a horror world, and a jungle adventure world, with the only real new ones being the dumbass Once Upon a Time fairy tale based world, and this shitty Greco-Roman epic world. How's that for fucking originality?
Please help me escape and the Romans.
Oh my! Listen to Sparty cuss.
You motherfucker! Okay, now to be fair, and before any of you get on my case for being too harsh in this game, the levels are obviously much bigger this time around. And while the in-game graphics aren't anything to write home about, especially when it comes to certain character models, the levels can actually look nice and big and worth exploring. The Warner film lot even has these small soundstage areas before each level that allows you to see some of the enemies and obstacles you'll be facing, which I admit is a pretty nice touch. And I do like the way that the game tries to make the way you get each individual Edgar a little bit varied. Some of the minigames do have some pretty genuinely fun ideas, like this part of the western level where you have to save Dot from the old damsel tied to the train tracks bit. Or going around busting ghosts. Oh, and my personal favorite, having to solve puzzles on what appears to be the freaking lament configuration from Hellraiser.
We have such sights to show you.
I gotta admit, that's pretty hilarious. Oh no. Oh, no. You did not just put a fucking sliding block puzzle in there! And the other is a don't touch the edges maze? On a joypad? Oh, now I see why they chose the lament configuration for this. This clearly is the actual gate to hell. Look, my point is, there is a spark of a fun idea here and there. but it's usually lazily slapped on, gone before you can enjoy it, and not even that fun while you're actually doing it. This game, man. It's just so bare bones to me. It's like somebody handed Warthog a barely finished template for a 3D platformer, they took one look at it, and then they just slapped some half-assed Animaniacs models on there. Like, what happened here? You have a triple jump instead of a double jump? That's kind of unique, I suppose. Each Warner gets 2 attacks. That's about it, yeah. Like in the last game, each Warner does have a unique ability tied to a specific tool, but you have to find and unlock them in order to use them, and they aren't really all that interesting. For example, Yakko can use bombs to blow up certain obstacles. Wacko can use a shovel to dig and has exactly one voice clip that plays every time you do so.
I can dig it, baby. 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 I can dig it, baby.
And if your favorite Animaniac happens to be Dot, then tough titties! Her ability, the limbo dance, just means that she can go under narrow spaces, after which you almost always immediately need to switch to Wacko and Yakko to use their tools instead. And you can't even do that as easily as with one press of a button like in the Genesis game. No. They went the Donkey Kong 64 route and forced you to hunt down this dumbass door to switch. Oh man, look at Wacko. Yeah, look at that little shit. He knows the game sucks. He's like, yeah, well, you already paid money for it, so kiss my ass. Okay, so at best the game is kind of a generic platformer, and at worst it's a bit of a buggy bitch, right? You know, just another in a long line of not that good mid-2000s licensed video games. I could deal with that. I've seen that kind of stuff before. It's no big deal, and I mean, hey, at least we still have the original voice actors. And I mean, the box promises tons of characters, right? So at least the game should still be full of that classic Animaniacs hilarity we all know and love. You want a complete list of Animaniacs characters that show up in this Animaniacs game? Okay, fine. I'll give it to you. Yakko, Wacko, Dot, Chicken Boo as a collectible in each level, Pinky and the Brain, Scratch and Sniff, twice, and a Frankenstein bride that I think is supposed to be Hello Nurse playing a role, but hey, you tell me with graphics like these. And at the very end, when you finally beat the game, you hear welcome plots.
Panic over, Mr. Potts! I found them again, and all the Edgars. The puppy children had them all the time. Well done, Ralph. Now lock them back in the tower where they belong, and we can put all this behind us.
From off screen. That's it. No Skippy and Slappy, no Good Feathers, no Rita and Runt, no Buttons and Mindy, not even Mr. Skullhead, the Mime, Katie Kaboom, the Flame, or any of those characters show up. Or at least, if they do, they're background cameos at most and very easy to miss. It's literally just the most bare-bones cast they could get away with including, with Chicken Boo as the one minor surprise. Like, goddamn guys, this is Animaniacs! The whole point of the original cartoon was to be a variety show where you never really knew who was gonna pop up next. I don't need you to recycle voices used for other bit characters in the cartoon. I played this for the Animaniacs and their pals. Okay, you know what? If you're gonna put in minimal effort, so am I. Screw getting all the Edgars. You only need 36 to fight the last boss anyway, so here we go. Well, I sure hope you enjoy playing Wish.com versions of classic Crash Bandicoot bosses. Because this is just the engine fight from Crash Bandicoot Warped, except we removed every single fun thing about it and made some of the targets freaking impossible to aim at. Why does this keep happening to me? Beat him up, get caught, yada yada, the end. But that can't be all there is to it, right? Surely something else has to happen if you get all the Edgars, right? Well, I wouldn't know, because for all my efforts painstakingly grabbing every collectible, finishing every minigame, finding every Chicken Boo and script page, there was one I just could not get. The rodeo game.
You look like the kind of fella who knows how to handle a wild filly.
You must know my sister.
Oh, Yakko, gross! Press the arrow keys when they appear to stay on the horse. Survive 3 rounds. That's it, that's all you gotta do. It should be easy. Look, I'll concede that it's entirely possible that maybe I'm just getting old. Maybe my controller is faulty. Maybe I just don't have any rhythm in my body. Maybe my capture device caused some kind of input lag. I don't know. All I do know is that the 3rd round of the rodeo minigame in Animaniacs The Great Edgar Hunt was freaking impossible for me. Oh sure, the first 2 rounds are easy as pie, but for some reason the 3rd round goes so lightning fast you barely have time to register the button prompt before it's moved on. And even when I know for a fact that I hit it correctly, I still miss a hit point. Every now and then the game takes mercy and I get 1, but nope! I just could not beat this one. Not that it matters anyway, because guess what? There is no 100% completion bonus. All you get is a result screen that shows you a big fat 100%, like, good job, fucko! You wasted hours upon hours, but at least you got a fancy number to go up. What do you mean new levels, extra boss fights, or a new game plus? What do you think this is, Resident Evil 4? Look, I'm sorry, I didn't want to go into this guns blazing and tear the game a new one. I know a lot of people have great nostalgia for this, and I'm sure at the time seeing the Warners jump around in 3D and hearing them talk with their real voices was cool and everything, but boy, I don't think it holds up at all. With ugly graphics, a bare-bones cast, and all-around uninspired mechanics, the game looks unfinished, feels unpolished, and becomes almost entirely unenjoyable as a result. Combine this with the fact that it came out 7 years after the show ended, and Great Edgar Hunt has all the energy of a game that Warthog spat out on a tight schedule just to make sure they didn't lose the license. Maybe it was for the better that the Warners were thrown back in the water tower to cook a little longer before they came back in 2020. For whatever issues one might have with that show, it was still great to see the gang again and hear them poke fun at everything under the sun with their cartoony charm and musical wit. And though the show may be over, maybe one day the water tower will open again, and the Warners will spread their cheer once more. Possibly with another new cast, another slightly tweaked sense of humor, and perhaps even with new voices. But whether we're talking cartoons, or video games, or comic books, or direct-to-video movies, or God knows what other merchandise they got, the Animaniacs will always be fondly remembered for being animan-ey, totally insane-y, and very, very entertaining. So with that said, there's nothing left to tell you guys but mwah! Good night, everybody! See you in the next video.
I can't think of the ending of this show.
I can't think of anything else.
Thank you so much for watching this video, everybody. I wanted to release it for a while, but kept having to put it off, so I'm really glad to finally be releasing it. And if you're glad that you watched it, why don't you click the like button, leave a comment, and tell me all about your favorite licensed video games. Of course, I need to say a special thanks to Andreas Vilsam, Half Cryptid, Pocket Mouse, Elinor Stråhed, John G. Robinson, The Danish Penguin, Warren Miller, Silvermoon Ravenwolf, John Algetz, and anyone else who supports me on Patreon. You guys have no idea how much I appreciate this. Thank you. If you're interested in supporting me as well, you can find a link to my Patreon in the description below, along with a link to my Discord server, which you're welcome to join. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, go right ahead and do so now for more strange videos in the future. Once again, good night, everybody.